Well, hello and welcome back to class. This is Applied Anatomy and Physiology, AAP 301 for the College of Natural Health Sciences, Bermuda. My name is Dr. Delcina Bean Burrows, and this is lecture number 19, where we will be looking at the eye, vision, and visual perception. Now, for some of you, this is your last anatomy class, those of you who are in the Holistic Therapeutics program. However, those of you who are in the Masters of Science in Osteopathy and or naturopathy or natural health therapies, this is not your last anatomy and physiology class. So I want to wish the upcoming graduates all the very best, and I hope you have been learning about the human body with anticipation and enthusiasm, and hopefully you have found the subject matter very fascinating. Now, in terms of our lecture objectives for today, at the end of today's class, students will become familiar with the anatomy of the eye, understand the anatomy and physiology of vision, be familiar with the various types of visual perception, be familiar with the effects of aging on the visual system, and be familiar with common eye pathologies. Now, just like the last lecture that we had on the air, we will be looking at the visible body, the Human Anatomy Eye Book. So when you look in the mirror, you only see a very small part of your eyes, but in reality, they are incredibly complex organs with a pretty big job, enabling you to see. Let's take a look, pun intended, at the anatomy of the eye. The eye itself is a spherical sensory organ of the nervous system, responsible for sight. It is contained within the orbits of the skull. The eyes are protected from injury by pads of fat. The eye is comprised of several layers and chambers, more than we can even show in this little ebook. How about that? But here are four that you need to know. The sclera. This is the white part of the eye. The sclera is made up of white fibrous tissue and fine elastic fibers. It maintains the shape and rigidity of the eye. The choroid. The choroid lines most of the internal surface of the sclera. It provides nutrients to the posterior surface of the retina and helps prevent reflection in the eyeball. The retina. It is a delicate nervous tissue membrane. The retina is the inner layer of the eye. The images of external objects are received by the retina. Each retina has 120 million rods, which allow the eye to see in dim light, and about 600 million cones, which detect color. The vitreous body or humor. Forming about 4/5 of the bulb of the eye, the vitreous body holds the retina against the choroid, giving the retina a flat, even surface for receiving images. The pupil is a circular opening in the center of the iris that allows light to enter the eye. The pupil constricts to decrease the amount of light entering in, and it dilates to increase the amount of entering light. The iris is the colored part of the eye. Eye color depends on the amount of melanin in the iris. Low amounts of melanin result in blue, moderate amounts result in green, and large amounts result in brown, hazel, and sometimes black. A contractile disc, the iris, regulates the amount of light that flows into the eye by constricting or expanding the pupil. The lens is located behind the pupil and iris and is enclosed in a protective membrane. It focuses images onto the retina to produce clear vision. The ciliary muscles change the tension of the zonular fibers, adapting the lens for near or far vision. The ciliary processes are folds that are arranged in a circle on the internal surface of the ciliary body. These secrete aqueous humor. Zonular fibers, or ciliary zonules, extend from the ciliary processes and attach to the lens, holding it in place. Tense or loose fibers change the shape of the lens, allowing for long-range or short-range focus, respectively. The extraocular muscles are responsible for eye motion and movement. The extraocular muscles include the superior rectus, the inferior rectus, the medial rectus, the lateral rectus, and the superior oblique, as well as the inferior oblique. They originate on the common tendinous ring. And here's one interesting fact. The extraocular muscles move over 100,000 times a day. The lacrimal apparatus is a group of structures that produce and drain tears into the eye. The apparatus consists of the lacrimal gland, which resembles a serous salivary gland, and 6 to 12 excretory ducts, including the lacrimal ducts, lacrimal sac, and the nasolacrimal duct. To generate tears, the lacrimal glands produce a watery solution containing salts, mucus, and a protective enzyme. When the eyelid blinks, it spreads the fluid medially over the anterior of the eyeball. The eye would be useless if not for the optic nerve, which is a special sensory nerve that transmits the image on the retina to the visual cortex in the brain for processing. And here's another interesting fact. Alcmaeon of Croton, an ancient Greek philosopher, believed the eyes were made of fire and water, and vision was what was reflected in their gleam. Let's now take a closer look at vision. The eye is put together in 3 layers called tunics. There is an outer, inner, and middle tunic in each eye. In order to understand how the eye is put together, let's take a look at a camera. Here is a very basic camera illustrated in the picture here to the right. There is a frame to hold things together, a lens, an aperture, and a piece of film. Light rays from the subject pass through the aperture, lens, and a space in the frame to reach the film. The aperture can change its diameter to let in more or less light. Notice that the image is upside down on the film. Notice the similarities between the camera and the eye. The frame of the eye is the sclera, which is the white portion of the eye. Cameras are usually painted black on the inside. This provides a good contrast for the image on the film. The eye has a similar structure called the choroid coat. It is the middle layer of the eye and is a dark colored membrane. The aperture is the pupil. The lens is still the lens, and the film is now the retina. There are some additional structures such as the cornea, which is a transparent portion of the outer tunic to allow light into the eye, the iris or colored part of the eye, and the ciliary body that holds the lens in place. The large space between the lens and the retina is filled with a jelly fluid called vitreous humor. The ciliary body also secretes a watery fluid called aqueous humor, which is in the front part of the eye. The optic nerve carries the visual information from the retina to the brain. The fovea centralis is the area of sharpest vision. The blind spot is where the optic nerve connects to the back of the eyeball. Light rays that enter the eye and follow a straight path to the back of the eye reach an area called the fovea centralis. This is also known as the area of sharpest vision, as we already mentioned, and is conveniently located in the straight path. This area has the largest concentration of photoreceptors. A bit off to the side is the blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the eyeball. There are no photoreceptors here, and the brain fills in the area so you don't even realize it. Visual acuity is the clearness or sharpness of vision when measured at a distance of 20 feet. So let's talk about ocular motor skills. There are three basic types of eye movements. Fixations, which is the ability to hold eyes steady without moving off target. Saccades, this is the ability of our eyes to make accurate jumps as we change targets. Pursuits, this is the ability of our eyes to follow a moving target. Fixation is the most basic eye movement skill from which other skills grow. Good fixation skills allow us to maintain a steady gaze without our eyes moving involuntarily off target. This allows images entering the eye to be centered on the fovea, the part of the retina that gives us our clearest vision. Without the ability to fixate, images will be blurry and confusing. In school, comprehension suffers as our eyes involuntarily move off the print and words jumble or jump around. Inadequate fixation skills must be addressed early in a treatment program before other oculomotor techniques are attempted, because it is the foundation skill upon which others build. Saccades are eye jumps, the sudden quick voluntary change in fixation from one object to another. Saccades involve any shift in gaze, such as from a road sign to a speedometer, from board to paper, and notes to a computer screen. During reading, accurate saccadic movements are critical. The eyes must move left to right along a straight line without deviating up or down to the lines above or below. In addition, when we reach the end of a line, our eyes make a difficult reverse step back to the beginning of the next line. If a child or older adult cannot control these eye movements, he or she will lose his place and comprehension becomes a problem. The ability to make accurate saccades involves a very precise coordination between our central and peripheral visual systems. Our central vision processes what we're looking at in clear detail and defines what we are seeing. What is it? While our peripheral vision simultaneously locates the next target to let us know where to aim our eyes during the next saccade. Where is it? If there is not a continuous fluid simultaneous integration between the two systems, saccadic eye movements will be poor. Pursuit eye movements are used to follow a moving target. Accurate smooth pursuit eye movements allow us to make spatial judgment as to the speed and position of the moving target. Pursuit eye movements are especially important in driving and sports. To evaluate pursuit movements, you can randomly move a small target between about 20 inches in front of the person's eyes and observe the following. Does the head move with the eyes? How accurate are left and right, up, down, z-axis movements, and rotations? Does the patient alter at certain positions of gaze. How quickly does he or she correct this mistake? Is the patient tense, rigid, wiggly, or needing encouragement to complete the task, indicating the effort that they must exert? And does accuracy degenerate with time? Teaming. Controlling how we use and aim our eyes together is an important skill that keeps us from seeing double. The ability to use both eyes as a team or a single functioning pair is what allows our brain to fuse the two separate pictures coming in from each eye into a single image with depth perception. This skill is called binocularity or binocular fusion. Some people have difficulty aiming their eyes together, especially when looking at small images at close ranges, such as reading print. This is why eye teaming problems are especially difficult for school-age children. As they fatigue from the strain that small print places on their visual system, they lose the ability to aim their eyes at the exact same point. If the images each eye is recording are different enough, the brain can't fuse them, and the result is double vision. Not all children see double, however. In order to avoid double vision, the visual system will often suppress an eye, that is, turn off one eye, by blocking the image from reaching the visual cortex in the brain. But the effort to turn off an eye is exhausting and causes the child to lose concentration. If the child doesn't stop reading, he'll soon become too tired to suppress and will then start to see double. Other times, the visual system tries to compensate by using the focus system to help lock eye aiming in place. By focusing too much, children can keep their eyes aimed together for a short while longer, but the result is blurry vision and headaches. Most children stop reading long before they see double or get headaches. This is why eye teaming problems can look like attention issues. Because they have to stop frequently to rest their eyes, these children are often misdiagnosed as having ADD, which is attention deficit disorder. There are two basic ways to aim or team our eyes. The ability to turn our eyes inward to maintain single vision when looking at objects up close is called convergence. Children who struggle to aim their eyes inward may have a visual deficit called convergence insufficiency. Their natural eye aim is in a relaxed outward position, making it more difficult for them to comfortably aim their eyes inward for long periods of time. As they fatigue, their eyes tend to float outward and aim slightly behind the target. When this happens, the child will either see double, suppress an eye to maintain single vision, or stop looking at the target altogether. The ability to turn our eyes outward to maintain a single image when looking at distant objects is called divergence. Children who struggle to relax their eye aim tend to aim inward too much, and they may have a visual deficit called convergence excess. Their visual system is too tight. When looking at near objects like print during reading, their eyes fatigue and return to their natural inward position. When this happens, the child's eyes are aimed in front of the target, and he will either see double, suppress an eye to maintain single vision, or stop looking at the target altogether. Now let's talk about rods and cones. There are two different types of photoreceptors in the eye. One is for color and the other for black and white vision. The photoreceptors for color are called cones. The others are called rods for black and white vision. Cones work better in daylight and rods work better at night. Cones are also more concentrated, in the central area of the retina, the fovea centralis, while rods are more concentrated in the periphery of the retina for peripheral vision. These receptors work by virtue of chemical reactions. In the rods, the key substance is rhodopsin. Rhodopsin consists of two parts, which include opsin, a protein, and retinol. Rhodopsin is embedded in the rod cell membrane. Rhodopsin breaks down in light, causing the retinol to separate from it. The separation of retinol causes changes in the membrane potential that travels to the nervous system. One important thing about retinol is that it contains vitamin A. It was actually found that soldiers in World War II who did not get enough vitamin A developed night blindness. Cones require a higher intensity of light in order to trigger action potentials. Cones use different opsins corresponding to the primary colors they absorb: blue, green, red. The reaction of retinol and opsins is essentially the same as in rods. The end result is a change in membrane potential. If you don't have the right cones or small amount of a certain type of cone, you will be color blind. The most common type is red-green color blindness, in which red and green are seen as the same color. Up to 8 to 10% of the male population may have some degree of color blindness. Let's now take a closer look at visual perception. Visual perception is the brain's ability to receive, interpret, and act upon visual stimuli. It is the ability to interpret, analyze, and give meaning to what we see. These skills help us recognize and integrate visual stimuli with previously stored data to form a stable, predictable, familiar world. In other words, visual perception allows us to understand, not just to see. In school, visual perceptual skills are particularly important. Without good perceptual skills, we could not recognize words we've already seen, tell the difference between an A, a P, and a Q, sequence the order of letters when spelling, visualize reading content for comprehension, determine left from right, scan a busy worksheet, mentally manipulate objects in math, conceptualize relationships in science, and connect other sensory stimuli to our visual construct, such as the sound of a keyboard to a piano. Visual perception skills are generally broken down into distinctive subcategories based on their analytical function. These subsets of skills do not work in isolation, but operate in combination with each other for efficient visual function. Whether considered separately or collectively, these skills are critical to learning. Visual perception is based on the following 7 elements. Visual discrimination. This is the ability to distinguish one shape from another. Visual memory. This is the ability to remember a specific form when removed from your visual field. Visual spatial relationships. This is the ability to recognize forms that are the same but may be in a different spatial orientation. Visual form constancy. This is the ability to discern similar forms that may be different in size, color, or spatial orientation, and to consistently match the similar forms. Visual sequential memory. This is the ability to recall 2 to 7 items in sequence with vision occluded. Visual figure ground. This is the ability to discern discrete forms when camouflaged or partially hidden. Visual closure. This is the ability to recognize familiar forms that are only partially completed. Now let's take a look at aging and the visual system. Age sometimes brings changes that weaken our vision and eyes, but we can do certain things to maintain lifelong eye and overall health. The solution may be as simple as using brighter lights around the house to help prevent accidents caused by weak eyesight, or seeing the doctor more frequently to screen for age-related diseases. Age-related declines in vision can be categorized into three general levels. The first is changes in the optics of the aging eye. The second is sensory changes from retina to early visual cortex. And the third is perceptual changes. This is the mid and high level visual cortex area of the brain. So let's take a closer look at age-related changes in optics. This is the first level of vision in which age-related changes occur and is the projection of light to the retina, the optics. For example, studies have found age-related changes in biochemistry of the cornea and corneal thickness, lens, opacity, vitreous humor, accommodative focus, and optical focus due to myopia, which is nearsightedness, hyperopia, which is farsightedness, and astigmatism, which is curvature of the eye that causes blurred distance and near vision. Although changes in the optics of the eye in elderly individuals can lead to a reduction in light that reaches the retina, that is retinal illuminance, it is clear that these age-related changes cannot account for age-related declines in sensory and perceptual performance. This is because age-related changes in optics alter the input to the visual cortex and should have a uniform effect on visual processing. For example, reduced light due to lens opacity can alter the ability to detect an impeding collision with an approaching object, but the impact on the ability to detect a collision should be constant across all speeds and directions. Thus, although one might find an overall effect of age, it will not vary with parameters associated with motion processing, that is, speed and direction. However, a review of the literature clearly indicates that many age-related declines in sensory and perceptual performance are selective and not constant. Now let's consider age-related changes in sensory processing. The second level of age-related changes in vision concerns the neural systems responsible for processing sensory information. These changes include spatial and temporal changes in the neural mechanisms from the retina to early levels of visual cortex and involve the detection and discrimination of simple features such as luminance patterns, orientation contrast, and motion, the building blocks of higher level visual processing. For example, studies have found age-related changes in spatial and temporal properties of rods, cones, and retinal ganglion cells. In addition, studies have found declines in the number of rods in parafoveal vision and the number of neurons in the ganglion cell layer of the retina. Now let's look at age-related changes in perceptual processing. The next level in the visual processing hierarchy is the combination of low-level sensory features for the performance of visual tasks such as the perception of 2D form, depth and scene layout, and optic flow analysis for locomotion and collision avoidance. Age-related changes in perceptual processing reflect changes that occur at mid or high levels of visual processing and include cortical regions and higher visual areas. Similar to the results of optical and sensory levels, the evidence of age-related declines in perceptual processing cannot be characterized by a single underlying factor. Instead, the types of processing declines associated with normal aging are highly idiosyncratic and specific to the types of processing critical for a particular visual task. Now let's take a look at some of the common pathologies of the eye. Achromatopsia is the congenital deficiency in color perception, also referred to as color blindness. Astigmatism is a defective curvature of the cornea and lens which causes light rays to focus unevenly over the retina rather than being focused on a single point, resulting in a distorted image. Cataracts. This is a degenerative disease in which the lens of the eye becomes progressively cloudy, causing decreased vision. Conjunctivitis. This is inflammation of the conjunctiva, which can be caused by bacteria, allergy, irritation, or a foreign body. Glaucoma. This is a condition in which aqueous humor fails to drain properly and accumulates in the anterior chamber of the eye, causing elevated intraocular pressure. Hordeolum. This is a small, purulent inflammation infection of a sebaceous gland of the eyelid, also called a stye. Macular degeneration. This is the breakdown of the tissues in the macula, resulting in loss of central vision. Presbyopia. This is the gradual loss of the eye's ability to focus on nearby objects. It is a natural, often annoying part of aging. Presbyopia usually becomes noticeable in the early to mid-40s and continues to worsen until around age 65. And in the sense that it is a natural progression, it's not really a disease per se, it's more a condition, but we do have it listed here with some of the other common pathologies of the eye. Retinal detachment. This is the separation of the retina from the choroid, which disrupts vision and results in blindness if not repaired. And strabismus. This is the muscular eye disorder in which the eyes turn from the normal position so that they deviate in different directions. We have reached the end of today's lecture, and for assignment number 19, I'd like for you to answer the following questions. This is not going to be essay form, you're just answering the questions in block style. List the common structures of the eye. What is visual acuity? How does aging affect the visual system? Provide a definition for visual perception and provide definitions for the following visual perceptual skills: visual discrimination, visual memory, visual spatial relationships, visual form constancy, visual sequential memory, visual figure ground, and visual closure. And you're going to state what are the common eye pathologies. This assignment is due this coming Sunday by 11:55 p.m. If you have difficulty with this assignment, you may shoot me an email or send me a text message. My office hours are on Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. And with that, I look forward to seeing you all in the next lecture, for those of you who will be continuing. But for those of you who are finishing, where this is going to be your last lecture for this course, I will look forward to seeing you at graduation. Do take care.